The man WHO heard the invisible. It began not with noise, but with silence. A silence so deep it filled the space between worlds. Before a single human voice traveled through the air without wires. Before radio towers pierced the sky. Before static and song and message. There was only the quiet hum of possibility. In the late 19th century, humanity was on the edge of a new age. Steam had conquered the land. Electricity was beginning to light the night. And minds across the world burned with one question. Could the invisible be controlled? Could sound, information, even emotion, move through the air, unseen, untouched, yet perfectly alive? Among those who dared to believe it was possible was a man with dark eyes and a restless soul. Nikola Tesla. He was not a man of wealth or comfort. His hands trembled not from fear, but from the electricity that seemed to live inside him. Born in a small village in what is now Croatia, Tesla grew up chasing lightning storms, convinced that nature spoke in flashes and vibrations. By the time he arrived in America in 1884, the world already knew another name: Thomas Edison. Edison represented the power of practical invention. Machines that worked, that sold, that made money. Tesla represented something else entirely. Imagination. Where Edison saw business, Tesla saw beauty. Where Edison wired, Tesla dreamed wireless. In 1891, inside a laboratory filled with coils and sparks, Tesla began speaking of something the world did not yet understand. He told journalists, with his calm, strange confidence, that one day messages would fly through the air without wires. They laughed. It sounded like madness, the kind of dream that lives only in science fiction. But Tesla was not dreaming. He was experimenting. He built towering coils that sent arcs of lightning across the room. Illuminating bulbs held meters away. No wires, no batteries, just invisible waves pulsing through the ether. He wrote in his notebooks about resonance, about frequencies that could travel through the earth itself. He imagined global communication, the world connected through energy. And somewhere across the Atlantic, another man was listening to a different kind of silence. Alexander Popov, a Russian physicist and naval engineer, worked quietly in St. Petersburg. Unlike Tesla, Popov did not chase fame. He built, measured, recorded. His work focused on lightning, detecting its strikes through electromagnetic disturbances. In 1895, Popov presented a device that could detect these waves, a coherer that turned invisible energy into a signal. He demonstrated it publicly, sending the first wireless signal ever recorded. 2 words in Morse code. Heinrich Hertz. It was a tribute to Heinrich Hertz, the German scientist who had first proven, only a few years earlier, that electromagnetic waves existed at all. Hertz himself had never tried to use his discovery for communication. He considered it a curiosity, a proof of Maxwell's theories. But others, like Tesla and Popov, saw in those waves the beginning of something vast. Yet the man who would soon claim the title, inventor of radio, was not in Russia or America. He was in Italy. Young, ambitious, and hungry for success. Guglielmo Marconi was not a scientist like Tesla or Popov. He was a visionary entrepreneur, a bridge between the lab and the marketplace. In 1895, in his family's attic, Marconi began building his own version of the wireless telegraph. He used a coherer, an antenna, and a transmitter, concepts already explored by others. But his genius was in putting them together. simplifying, improving, and demonstrating results the public could see. He managed to send signals across a hill, then across miles of countryside. The Italian government showed little interest, but the British, a nation obsessed with communication, saw potential. In 1896, Marconi traveled to London. Within a year, he had patents, investors, and headlines. The name Marconi became synonymous with wireless. While Tesla dreamed of world systems, Marconi built them. He established companies, set up stations, and transmitted the first long-distance messages. By 1901, he achieved the unthinkable: a wireless transmission across the Atlantic Ocean, from England to Newfoundland. It was a moment that defined the new century. The newspapers called him a genius. The world called him the father of radio. But Tesla, reading those same papers in his New York laboratory, knew another story. Years earlier, he had already demonstrated wireless energy transmission at far greater distances, had patented crucial components of radio technology, tuned circuits, power oscillators, and the principle of resonance. In fact, Tesla's U.S. patent number, 645,576, filed in 1897 and granted in 1900, described a system for wireless communication, a patent that legally came before Marconi's. Yet the patent office, under pressure from Marconi's powerful backers, later overturned Tesla's rights and granted Marconi the patent for radio. The battle for recognition would last decades. Tesla, brilliant but poor, continued to chase his dream of the world wireless system, a global network transmitting information, power, and communication through the Earth itself. He built the Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, a massive structure meant to be the beating heart of his vision. He believed it could send not just messages, but electricity, freely, to anyone, anywhere. But investors wanted profit, not utopia. When they realized Tesla's dream offered no way to charge customers for power, they withdrew support. The tower was never completed. Meanwhile, Marconi's fame grew. His company expanded across oceans, ships, and continents. In 1909, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for the invention of radio. Tesla received nothing. In the years that followed, Tesla became a ghost in his own century. Brilliant, misunderstood, wandering through hotel rooms with pockets full of blueprints no one would fund. He watched the world embrace the wireless age he had predicted. Radios filled homes. Music and news flowed through the air. And nations communicated at the speed of light. Yet few remembered the man who had first seen it all coming. But history has a way of correcting itself. In 1943, just months after Tesla's death, the U.S. Supreme Court reviewed the long-disputed patents. Their decision was quiet, almost hidden, but monumental. They restored Tesla's patent rights, officially recognizing that his inventions predated Marconi's. Legally, Tesla was the true inventor of radio. By then, the world had already moved on. But his vision had not. Tesla's dream of a connected planet, where energy and information flow freely through the air, was no longer fantasy. It was reality. Not just in radio, but in every wireless signal that now connects billions of people. From Wi-Fi to smartphones to satellite communication. Every invisible wave still carries a fragment of his idea. And yet, even as technology advanced, the question remains: who truly invented the radio? Was it Tesla, whose mind reached beyond the limits of his time? Popov, whose quiet precision built the first working receiver? Marconi, whose ambition turned science into revolution? The answer, perhaps, is not one name, but many. Hertz revealed the waves. Popov captured them. Tesla understood them. Marconi broadcast them. Each played a part in making the invisible speak. But if we listen closely, through the static, through the hum of every frequency around us, maybe, just maybe, we can still hear the whisper of the man who heard the invisible before anyone else. Nikola Tesla. The year was 1901. Across the cliffs of Newfoundland, wind tore through the Atlantic air. Waves smashed against the frozen shore as a young Italian stood holding a strange contraption. A wire, a kite, and a fragile receiver. Guglielmo Marconi listened, waiting, somewhere across the ocean, more than 2,000 miles away in England. Another device transmitted a simple signal. 3 short clicks. The letter S in Morse code. When Marconi heard the faint sound through the static, he knew history had changed. For the first time, a human message had crossed the Atlantic without wires. It was as if the ocean itself had spoken. Newspapers exploded with headlines. Marconi conquers the air. Quote, "The world stood in awe." From that moment forward, the age of the wireless began. But far away, in his dimly lit New York laboratory, Nikola Tesla read the same headlines in silence. He did not shout, or curse, or write to the papers. He simply turned back to his notes, to the equations he had written years earlier that described the very same transmission Marconi had just performed. He knew. He had been there first. Tesla's laboratory on Houston Street was a cathedral of lightning. Inside, great copper coils hummed with energy. When switched on, they filled the room with white arcs that danced like ghosts. To those who saw it, it seemed like magic. But to Tesla, it was nature, the language of the universe itself, finally speaking through his machines. He had already transmitted signals wirelessly across distances larger than Marconi's earliest experiments. He had designed circuits that tuned into specific frequencies, the foundation of modern radio. But Tesla was not a businessman. He was an artist of science. While Marconi gathered investors and patents, Tesla pursued perfection. Something beyond communication. A world powered entirely by invisible energy. That was the essence of his dream. The world wireless system. Not just voices, not just code, but light, power, and information, flowing freely through the Earth's atmosphere. He imagined a planet where every home, every ship, every person could receive energy and messages from the air itself. To bring this dream to life, he built the Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, a 57-meter-tall steel giant, rising above the trees like a monument to the future. Underneath it lay a network of tunnels, designed to send pulses of electrical energy through the ground and across the globe. But as Tesla's tower rose, so did doubt. Investors, including the powerful financier J.P. Morgan, began to worry. If Tesla could transmit power wirelessly, how could anyone profit? Who would pay for free energy? The logic of business collided with the idealism of invention. In 1906, the funding stopped. The tower stood unfinished, a skeleton of a dream too far ahead of its time. Meanwhile, Marconi's empire expanded. His company, Marconi Wireless, built stations across the Atlantic. Ships at sea began using his equipment to send distress calls and news. For the first time, Messages traveled faster than ships themselves. Radio had become not just a curiosity. It was now a lifeline. Then came the night of April 14, 1912. The RMS Titanic, hailed as unsinkable, struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic. As the ship began to sink, radio operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride sent desperate messages into the dark. CQD. SOS. Come at once. We have struck an iceberg. Those invisible waves, the very technology Tesla had dreamed of, reached ships hundreds of miles away. The Carpathia turned and saved over 700 lives. The world wept. But it also realized something profound. Radio could save humanity. By the time of the First World War, radio had become the voice of armies. Generals no longer waited for messengers. They commanded from miles away. Nations fought not only with guns, but with frequencies. Every signal mattered. Every transmission could mean victory or defeat. Tesla watched all this unfold with quiet pride and sorrow. He knew that his inventions, once born from a desire to unite the world, were now being used to control and divide it. Still, he kept working, experimenting late into the night, feeding pigeons outside his window between tests, dreaming of peace through understanding. In 1915, rumors spread that Tesla and Marconi would share the Nobel Prize in Physics. But the award never came. Tesla received no recognition, no money, no celebration. Marconi remained the hero of wireless. Yet behind closed doors, legal battles raged. Tesla's patents, filed years earlier, contained the core principles of Marconi's system. Lawyers argued, governments took sides, and corporations fought for control of what was now a multi-million-dollar industry. In the end, money and influence triumphed. For a while, Marconi's company grew into a global empire. Tesla, penniless, was forced to leave his lab behind. In 1917, the Wardenclyffe Tower was demolished for scrap metal. The dream crumbled. But history, as always, has a long memory. As the decades passed, the world changed beyond recognition. By the 1920s, radio had entered every home. Families gathered around wooden boxes glowing with light, listening to music, news, and voices from faraway lands. For the first time in history, humanity shared the same moment together. The power of the invisible had united millions. Politicians discovered its power too. In Germany, Italy, the United States, and the Soviet Union, leaders used radio to shape thought, emotion, and belief. Radio had become not only a tool of connection, but of persuasion. It could inspire nations, or destroy them. In the 1930s, Tesla, now an old man living in a small New York hotel, would listen to the radio late at night. He recognized the power of the device, not as an invention, but as a piece of his soul. In the static, he could almost hear echoes of his old experiments, the crackle of his coils, the whisper of frequencies he had once tamed. He never married, never had children. His legacy was the invisible world itself. Then, in January 1943, Nikola Tesla died alone in room 3327 of the New Yorker hotel. He was 86 years old. No funeral crowds, no headlines, just silence. But fate, it seems, has a poetic sense of timing. That same year, the United States Supreme Court revisited the patent dispute between Marconi and Tesla. After reviewing decades of evidence, they ruled that Tesla's earlier patents were valid. and that Marconi's work had relied upon them. The decision was quiet, overshadowed by the Second World War. But it changed everything. It meant that, legally and historically, Nikola Tesla, not Marconi, was the true inventor of radio. He never lived to see his name restored. But history, at last, had spoken. The years that followed proved just how deeply Tesla's vision had reached. The radio gave birth to new worlds: broadcasting, music, entertainment, culture. Then came radar, television, and satellites, all born from the same idea: energy and information traveling through space without wires. By the mid-20th century, humanity's voice had leaped beyond the planet itself. The same invisible waves Tesla once dreamed of harnessing now carried signals to the moon, to a spacecraft, to the stars. When Neil Armstrong spoke from the lunar surface in 1969, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. His words traveled through the same electromagnetic waves first tamed in Tesla's lab. The dream of the wireless world had finally reached the heavens. Today, those same waves surround us every second. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, satellite communication. They are all descendants of that first spark. Each time your phone connects, each time music streams through the air, you are touching the invisible legacy of Nikola Tesla. Yet few people know his name. Fewer still know that the man once laughed at for dreaming of wireless power ended up inventing the foundation of our modern age. It's easy to forget how it began. In dim rooms filled with lightning. In the quiet obsession of a man who believed that energy and thought were one and the same. Tesla once said, "Greater than the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence." He saw beyond wires, beyond machines, beyond even matter itself. He saw a universe of vibration, of connection, where everything was energy, everything was frequency. And through that understanding, he brought us radio. But maybe, in the end, radio was just the beginning. Because what Tesla really invented was not a device. It was a vision, a belief that the world could be united by the invisible, that knowledge could flow freely, that sound and power could belong to everyone. That belief lives on, in every broadcast, every signal, every spark that leaps through the air. It is the pulse of our connected world. And if you listen closely, behind the static, behind the endless hum of frequencies that fill our lives, you might still hear him, the man who heard the invisible, Nikola Tesla.